Hi, this is John with Fix It Planet, and today we've got an Alcatel Idol 4, and it has a cracked back glass, it's got a busted frame, it's got all this damage up here, separated, so all of this has to be replaced. Obviously the display is damaged, the SIM tray is missing, the customer has it, so we won't be making a test phone call. And it's got more damage on the frame down here. No good. So today we're going to replace the entire frame, the back glass, the display, everything. So it's going to be a full, complete teardown. And we're going to have to swap out all these components from the inside. And the back glass did not come with the NFC antenna, so we are going to have to very carefully remove the NFC antenna from this original back and put it on the new one. And that is something that you need to take your time with. That will be included in the video, so it's not exactly exciting, but we're going to do it anyway. So as we begin to open it up, you'll be able to see the NFC antenna on the back of the glass there, which actually just connects to two little pins that are sticking up there. You can just see them now. And I'll point them out again later when we put everything back. So there's the NFC antenna right here and the connectors. The little copper pads there, those actually touch the, and then they're going to go over here, transfer that to there. We're also going to transfer this little plastic bezel right here and this little bit of adhesive around the camera lens. It actually keeps light from shining through and dust from getting in behind there, I guess, more than anything. It's probably more for dust. So as you can see here, we've got an entire disassembly display with frame and all. And so what we're going to get started here is getting these caps off the bottom and the top. All these screws are exactly the same size, so that's nice. These slide underneath the frame, and they include the speaker. So there's actually one on the top and the bottom. Now this metal bracket I'm taking off here actually has to go underneath that plastic cap that I just took off there. And when we go to put it back, I actually forgot and put that down first. So we'll end up taking it off again. You'll see that later on. So we're going to disconnect the battery first, and then we'll disconnect everything else. Another metal bracket. Be careful taking these pop connectors out. There are components around those connectors that can be chipped off or broken or whatever when you're actually going to pop those connectors up. So watch out for that. And now this tape that I'm taking off is not really that big a deal. It's not really important. They don't really serve much of a function. I do put back the big one over the antenna though, just because. Now this cap actually does have, I'm loosening it up a little bit, but it does have a little sort of clip, and I'll show that here in a second if I can, right in there. So once you get a hold on it, you can just pop that little clip on there, and there's the other speaker. This black tape is absolutely useless. It doesn't serve any real purpose. So we will not be putting that back. But we do need to get it out of our way, because we are going to have to take everything out of here and transfer it over to the new one. So there's a little pull tab on the adhesive holding the battery in. There's one on this end and two on the other end. Try to pull those out as much as you can, and the battery will come out a little easier. So I'm going to go ahead and start separating it on this side, and then we'll come down to the bottom and we'll pull out the other tabs. Be careful that you don't puncture the battery or cut into it. That would not be good. So we have a couple more tabs over here, and as you can see, I'm using metal tweezers. So by all means, if you have to use metal tool anywhere in the device, be warned that that is dangerous if you were to puncture the battery or cut into it or anything like that. So you need to be extremely careful with any kind of metal tool. There's also a small controller board up here at the top of the battery. Be sure that you don't break it trying to pry out the battery. Sometimes the battery will come out really easy if the tabs pull all the way out, but in this case you can see they did not. I'll just smooth out a few of these wrinkles here and inspect the battery. Looks fine. And there's the model, in case you need to replace it. And then the motherboard it's just laying in there, but you can kind of get a hold of it down here on the right hand side where I'm holding it. But you need to be careful at this point, because the rear facing camera is actually stuck down with adhesive, and it's pop connectors on the back side of the board. So we're not going to be able to just pull it out immediately. We need to disconnect that pop connector, and it's going to be a little bit blurry here, but that's the camera, and there's a pop connector right inside there. I know it's kind of hard to see. I'm not getting a good focus on that, so I'm going to get that popped loose with my spudger, and then I'll be able to show it again. There it is right there. Sorry, I know that's a bit blurry. Now the board will actually come all the way out. Front facing camera can stay connected. And then this isn't just gonna come out easily with a plastic spudger. It's stuck down pretty good. So I'm using the metal tool to kind of get it started, get it pried up enough to where I can get the spudger underneath it. Be sure that you don't pull on the cable and tear it. So you don't want to use the cable to remove the camera. A little bit of copper there. We're just going to smooth that out, stick it back down. Okay. So we're going to use a heat gun on low, and we're going to warm up just a little bit any of these components, any of these flex cables that are attached with adhesive to the frame. And we're going to help use that to help loosen that up, loosen up the bond a little bit so we can get underneath there and get these out of there. And again, I'm going to be primarily attempting to do as much of it I can with a plastic spudger or nylon spudger, whatever. In any case, but at some point I do have to use a metal tool. And once again, the metal tool can easily tear, cut, damage any of these flex cables with just the slightest slip of the finger, slip of the hand, whatever. So you don't want to pull on these cables with either. So I'm just pulling it out of the way, but I'm not pulling on it to pull that out. So it also has, this is the charge port connected as well as the vibrator, and it has adhesive underneath there as well. So it's stuck down a little bit. Takes a little persuasion to get it out. Now we've got these little rubber boots. They have channels and a small hole for sound to come in for microphones. There's actually a couple of them. So those do have to have the right orientation to go back in, and I'll kind of point that out later, at least with one of them. So there's the second one, and that's another microphone that's right inside there. And then a couple of sensors are attached to this cable as well. There's a rubber boot for those, which I also forgot to put back in, and we had to pull it back out. And that all comes later on in the video. So this one here, right about where those little, right here, I have to get in with some metal tools. So you have to be very careful if you use metal tools to get underneath any of these cables, so you don't cut or damage them. And this one here is really super thin, and I'm not going to be able to get underneath it with a spudger, so I'm going to wind up using my tweezers again. So we're going to warm that up just a bit, and I'm going to try to get as much of this as I can with the spudger, and ultimately we're going to end up using tweezers. Now this is a little board here for the antenna, and it's stuck down with adhesive also, and it has two little pins that stick up from the frame. Now I'm going to slide my metal tool underneath this flex cable here very carefully, and that's for the power button. Once I've got that loose, I'm going to go ahead and take out the rest of this board, because that cable runs underneath the board. So you don't want to try to pull it out with the board in place, or you're just going to tear it. Okay, we'll set that to the side. And now we've got our headphone jack is the last thing we need to get out of there. So make sure that all of the flex cable around it is free and clear, so it's not sticking to anything. And then we can just loosen that up a little bit and it comes right out. Okay, so we'll set that to the side. And all of that is part of the touchscreen and display assembly, and these buttons here, volume, and the little, I think that's a camera button on the side there, and all of that comes with the new frame, so those are going to stay where they are. And there's that last little boot for those two sensors. Sensor or flashlight or something, I can't remember. In any case, now this is the new frame. We've got brand new adhesive for the battery, and we're going to start putting everything back in. So basically we're going to just start where we in reverse. So the last thing we took out, we're going to start putting in first. So we get our headphone jack put into position, line up all the cables back where they came from, get our power button put into place, and here's where I should have put this little flashlight or sensor boot or whatever it is in there. Underneath that little metal bracket right there, there should be a boot. This one, as you can see, does have a little hole right there, and that's going to face outward, and there's a little channel right here that fits right over the microphone. And I'm going to put it in there, but we're going to have to take it out again anyway because I forgot to put this other boot in. I'm calling it a boot. It's a little rubber gasket, grommet, whatever you want to call it. So we'll put this board back in now for the antenna, and make sure it's seated down. It has new adhesive, so it should stick down nice and firm. And right here and right there is a couple of little posts, and those posts help to line that up, line that board up in the corner there. So here's where I had to take this back out. So I'm going to reseat that boot as we take it out because it moved. And we're going to put this other one right here. It has little openings there for the sensors. And it goes right there. It has a notch right there, so you can't put it in any other way. I mean, you can try, but that's the way it's supposed to go. So that's how you know which way it goes. If you forget, and then we'll just tuck that microphone back in where it goes. Make sure it's seated properly in its little cubby. Make sure the sensor's seated inside its little rubber boot. We have another one for the other microphone. As you can see, again, there's a little hole there and a nice channel in there for the mic. and that of course does need to be aligned properly. So the hole's going to go to the outside, and right there you can see it on the inside, that little hole. And that hole right there is going to line up with that other hole in the frame. And we're just going to make sure we push it into place so it's seated properly. And there you can see the hole on the outside. Okay, now we're going to put our charge port back and our vibrator. This assembly now tucks back into its little home. Just check and make sure that it's lined up properly. There's actually a couple of screw holes on either side of that you can just see here that that when the plastic caps are put back into place, those two screws go there and help to stabilize that charging port. And now we want to put our rear camera back on the motherboard. And since I do not wear gloves, we need to be careful that we don't touch the glass on the cameras and things of that kind of, those sorts of things. You just have to really pay attention and make sure that you're not putting fingerprints in places where they don't belong. I've mentioned it before, but I'm allergic to the latex gloves, and stuff like that irritates my skin, so unfortunately I have to look at my ugly hands. So we're just going to make sure that the camera is seated nice and flat, and that the motherboard is seated nice and flat. We don't have anything underneath preventing it from going where it's supposed to go. We're going to put this display cable pop connector in, and then we're going to smooth out this cable so it's nice and flat. Go ahead and put all the other pop connectors in for the buttons. Now I connected the antenna here, but at this particular stage you really don't need to, because it may, in my case, it got in the way when I went to put the plastic cap back on. I just had to disconnect it again. So there's really no reason to do it any more than you have to. So that was kind of an extra move that wasn't really necessary at this point. Just make sure the battery's lined up properly where it should go before you start to apply a little bit of pressure, and because once it sticks down, it's stuck pretty good. Now we're going to go ahead and connect the charging dock connector. And then these little tabs just fold over and stick down to the battery, just like they were when we took them out. So here I went to put this cap in and realized that the antenna was kind of in my way, so I needed to pull that out of the way. So there wasn't any reason to put that in until after I put that cap in. no big deal. Just snaps back into place, and then you can reconnect the antenna. And put all the screws back. Now on this one, I needed to put the metal bracket in first, and I forgot and screwed it down. So we ended up taking the screws back out, and so bear with me here. There's actually a little post that sticks up that holds that metal bracket in place underneath that plastic cap. And if you put the plastic cap down, you cannot slide that thing in underneath after the cap's in place. I mean, you probably could if it wasn't screwed down, but in this case it is. So, yep, I just realized it. So now we're going to take these screws out and lift that cap back off. Put our metal bracket back in. Now we can put the screws back in the metal bracket. And then we have another metal bracket here. And this one actually is sort of a tongue and groove type of thing, so you're going to slip the two tongues into the slots, put the two screws down, so that holds that into place. And I'm just going to put this black tape here over the top of the antenna here. And that other piece can just stay where it is. It's going to go in the trash. Alright, so here comes the fun part. Yay! We get to take this off. So we're going to take this plastic bezel here off first. We're going to warm it up just a tad. We don't want to overheat it or it will melt. It's just made. It does have actually a little bit of aluminum there, but there is some adhesive on there, and I don't want to overheat that because I'm going to have to take that off to stick this back down again. And then warm this up a little bit, and we're going to take this little foam cushion from around the camera lens there. We're going to put that back down where it came from on the new back glass. And again, be careful that you don't put fingerprints on the back side of this glass. And make sure before you put it back permanently on the phone that you do check that for any sort of lint, debris, or any other types of foreign bodies that may be in the way of the camera. So that you can clean it if you need to. And there's another little bit of adhesive right here that came off underneath the bezel, so we're gonna snag that, put it back in that same spot so that bezel will stick in place. This particular back glass did not come with any of that. All it came with was the adhesive to stick it down on the phone. And this also goes on a certain way. There is one corner that's kind of, you have 3 normal corners, and then you have one that's kind of got an angle to it, so you can tell which way it goes. And there's another little piece of foam here. I'm just going to take it and transfer it on over. I'm not really sure how important that is, but we're going to do it because we can. And now we're going to actually warm this back glass. We're going to warm it up a little bit on the side with the NFC antenna, and then we're going to really heat up the back side, get it nice and warm, and we're going to start to remove this antenna flex. So we are going to use a metal tool here. This is my thinnest metal tool that I have, and so therefore if we slip, now I'm going to pull this a little bit, but just going to be really super careful. And then we're going to use this metal tool. We're going to go around the edge of this, and we're just going to break the bond around the edge first, so that the edges are not sticking down. And we don't want this to be torn, because if it tears, you're done. You might as well get another one. So we aren't just going to heat it up and try to peel it off, because if we do that, then it may very likely, it does have layers, and those layers may tear as well. So we're going to warm this up really pretty good. And we're not going to overheat it, but we're going to warm it up real nice and toasty. And then we're going to just kind of go one little bit at a time, and just sort of gradually separate from the back glass. So as you can see, if you pay close attention, you'll notice that we're not cutting far into. We're just doing one little tiny strip at a time, so that we minimize the risk of cutting or tearing into the antenna flex. I'm sorry, the NFC antenna flex. Okay, and this is what it looks like underneath. And periodically we need to re-warm it. So we want to warm this up from the back side, so that we also minimize the risk of overheating or damaging the antenna from heat. So I don't know why this back glass didn't come with one. It just didn't. So I was forced to have to do this. I would have preferred not to have to do it, but in any case, what I have to go through. Okay. Success. Perfect. No damage whatsoever. No worse off for the wear. We'll be able to stick it back down to the new one, and it will be good to go. Now obviously I'm not going to be able to prove that in this particular video, because I don't have a wireless charger. You'll just have to take my word for it. Sorry guys. So we're going to smooth it out a little bit, clean the connector, the contacts there. So you can use your own adhesive if you prefer. This one just you know, happened to come with the adhesive to stick around the edges, so I'm going to go ahead and use it. Honestly, I'd prefer to use my own in pretty much every case, or at least most cases. All of this this black stuff that they send you is really not very good. So if I put this on there and and I'm not happy with it and I don't think it's going to stick, then I'll take it off and I will replace it with my own adhesive that I know is going to work. So all I'm doing is applying a little bit of pressure so I can get this blue masking off. Now before we take that masking off, I'm just going to lay it over the top, and that's how it's going to go. We're going to set it to the side, and we're going to test this phone and make sure that all of the available functions are working properly. So first we're going to plug it in, make sure it's charging, and it is. So we're going to test all the functions before we put the back on in case we need to do anything different. If we need to go back in and check a connection, or if there's something wrong with the screen, we may have to do it all over again. We don't want to put the back on until we know for sure the phone's working. And since I'm doing this as a voice over after the fact, you can't hear sound, but I can, so I do check to make sure the sound's working. So all the buttons are working, it's charging, touch function's good. For the most part, I'm pretty satisfied with that. If I had a SIM card and service in there, we would also do a test phone call. And you can run through several other a variety of different tests, for your purposes. This is just pretty much for the sake of the video. We just want to make sure that everything's functioning. But we're not going to go through every last single test that we could possibly do with it, because this video is already running about almost 40 minutes. So as you can see, here's where the antenna connects. It just touches those little pins that are sticking up there. And we'll polish this thing off. And it's all beautiful again. Yay. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it if you like and subscribe. Bye-bye now.